Hello, Mrs. McCreary here. Today we're going to be talking about operations in proportions. We're going to be looking at section 116 from Elementary Treatise, and in there it expands our rule of three from pure mathematics, saying, in dividing one extreme of the product by the means, we shall find the other extreme. And then, if we divide the product of the extremes by one of the means, we shall find the other mean. So let's look at how that is going to play out in two examples that I have here. If 100 workmen can finish a piece of work in 12 days, how many are sufficient to do the same work in 3 days? Okay, so for our example at the moment, I'm going to set it up exactly in a specific way, but again, there are many options for setting these up as long as your similar types are together, and you can go back to section 114 to look again at how you can set up your ratios or your fractions. Okay, but for this one we're going to be looking at workmen and days. Then again, how many? We're talking about workmen and days. So we're going to have 100 over 12 is equal to our unknown value, x, over 3. And now we can set that up and look at it as a compound fraction. We can think about it as a ratio, or it's also called, it gets us to the same place as cross multiplication, if you're familiar with that. So what we're going to be doing is multiplying this 100 by the 3 and then the 12 by the x. Now if we would write that out as a compound fraction, we are going to be working with the extremes and the means here. But again, cross multiplication gets us to the same place, and that is just fine. So we have 100 times 3 is 300 equals 12 times x is 12x. Divide by 12, divide by 12, x equals then 300 divided by 12. So in this case, we multiplied our extremes, divided by one of the means, and found our other mean. Or again, you can always just use cross multiplication. All right, now this example is one that I made myself, so the topic is not exactly what you would find in the book. But we'll work through it anyway. All right, so a yarn used in a pattern knits 12 stitches per inch in the pattern, and the yarn you want knits 9 stitches per inch. If your pattern calls for you to cast on 144 stitches in the old yarn, how many do you need to cast on in your new yarn? All right, so we're going to look at this. The numbers are a bit farther apart, but we can still work with it. So we're going to be comparing old yarn to new yarn, and then this is how the yarn knits by itself, and then in the pattern we want 144 stitches, and we're looking for how many we need. So again, in this case, if we were to set it up as a fraction, we have our two means and we're looking for an extreme. In this one up here we had our two extremes and we were looking for a mean. So that does, so each one of these talks about one of those aspects of the new and improved rule of three in Elementary Treatise. Again, of course, you can just cross multiply. So 12x equals 144 times 9, and then you would divide by 12 and divide by 12. So let's scooch down here. 144 times 9, 36, 9, 3, 12, 1, 2, 9, 6, divided by 12, that's going to be 1. bring that down, 96, 8. So in your new yarn, you would knit 100, you would cast on 108 stitches. Now, it doesn't really matter if you're familiar with what exactly is going on in the problem. Here, knitting is probably not your favorite thing to do, and you might not be familiar with scheduling workmen, but you can look for the numbers and still set up your problem accordingly, and then you can still figure out what you need to figure out to find your answer using that proportion. You can again use the rule of 3, or if you're more familiar, you can cross multiply. They do give you the same effect. The cross multiplication really is just that last step, and using the rule of 3 or using a compound fraction just kind of gives you the reason behind cross multiplication. But if you're familiar with just going from here right to here, that's fine. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will talk to you at our live chat.